Hello, Earth Freaks.
Hello.
Little mic adjustment, obviously.
Perfect.
So, we're from the Department of New Realities, and like the beautiful intro said, a collective and a group within Wieden+Kennedy, Amsterdam.
But not always. We both come from kind of a crazy suburban hell in America and Australia, a place where we had to create our own worlds, essentially, and our own cultures. Yeah, and I guess the theme is that we're always interested in combining technology and art. Yeah, with the consistent theme of kind of creating these fantasy worlds to escape to.
Yeah, and some of these fantasy worlds were lowbrow video game hacking, and this was an idea of using the Unreal Engine and using it as an art medium in itself. And this is probably 15 years ago when it was first coming out, not the new, way better Unreal Engine for VR, but just the idea of thinking about how you can break the pipeline of traditional development and make art out of these usual commercial engines. And also thinking about intimate internet, and this is this idea of, with net art, there was a certain intimacy with how websites can have a soul and have a heartbeat, and this idea of coming out of the gallery space and going into this one-on-one relationship that you have with the screen. And so we explored a lot of expression forms within that kind of idea and medium.
And also thinking about music video kind of content and how to weave in DOS dating interfaces and kind of marrying nostalgia and interface design inside the medium of music videos. And then thinking about kind of deeper spiritual notions about what happens in the afterlife and whether we might need to think about digital destinations.
Yeah, and worlds that don't need our bodies.
Yeah, and making sure, I guess, our avatars are fit and healthy in that space, and thinking about transportation of the future and potentially having kind of spa experiences as you travel in these pods through post-apocalyptic spaces.
Yeah, or thinking about cyborg runaway kids and having avatars that are able to walk the runway, and just kind of really treating avatars in the hyper-sensationalized way of man. And all of this is kind of what we call apocalyptic, or optical mood swings, also apocalyptic. It depends on the day, I'd say. And then, I guess a lot of our aesthetic has always been sort of hyperreal, psychedelic, sort of punk, anti-design, and all of these kind of approaches mixed together to create a sort of effect on the pixel. So just taking it out of something that's dry and giving it something that has a feeling and has sort of a possessed ghost kind of DNA about it.
Yeah, and I think everything we do, we're trying to give a grittiness or almost a dirtiness to technology, taking it out of that perfection and giving it an imperfection to make it feel like it has a soul. And so I guess we started seeing all of these realities. Some of these are dystopian, some of them are positive, but essentially we started seeing infinite possibilities to help redefine the future's landscape.
And with DPTNR, the Department of New Realities, we're trying to reflect what's going on with technology around us and just see what's kind of happening, see what's happening in Silicon Valley and modern, the sort of tech products that are coming out, and what we can do to give it a personality. And that's a big goal of ours. We're just all right, let's try to take something that doesn't really have an infusion of art and adapt our pipeline. So everybody is well versed in being able to switch from doing 3D content to work with some new augmented reality headset, or going back into low poly form for some kind of a hardware that's digital jewelry that needs to have some kind of basis of content. And all of these kind of ideas, we're always flexible so that we can enhance reality within current tech culture. And all of this work starts with what we call speculative fiction visions, and we start trying to think about how the future could be and try to articulate this idea around certain themes, like whether it's dystopia and sci-fi, or if we want to go with health tech and positivity. There's a lot of different angles that we can get inspired by, but it's always thinking first of what's not possible currently, but what could be possible in the future, and using that to drive experimentation and prototypes that help us lead in the right path as a form of direction.
Yeah, and a lot of the time we're just thinking about Instagram content or animations that we want to make that tend to kind of help direct the vision of what we're thinking about. So for instance, this is us trying to think about artificial intelligence in the future and whether that might be like a meditation tool for us, and that kind of leading into the design and thinking behind this physical meditation pod that's actually kind of more of a real life version of that.
Or playing with crypto kitties, which is cryptocurrency, and thinking about like a crypto kitty daycare, which is inspired by a future where we have to clean out our cat litter bank accounts and keep digital assets groomed and profitable. It's almost remixing cat grooming behavior with cryptocurrency ideas to spin money into something that it has like a sort of a cat-like value.
Totally absurd. Like, I didn't even know what you just said.
I don't either, but we're making it.
Let's just keep going. So all of these speculative fiction thinking kind of flies into client desires. So generally we're kind of jamming on these potential futures, and sometimes clients are like, yeah, we want that, or we want a version of that, and so we're constantly kind of experimenting and coming up with ways to bring in clients into our fantasy worlds that we're creating. This is an example of an apocalyptic speculation turned into an actual client project for Corona. And this was a VR game installation that we created called Bitmap Banshees, where you ride through like a post-apocalyptic version of Amsterdam.
Yeah, and the whole goal is you're riding on that bicycle and you're riding through Amsterdam and having these banshees come towards you, and you're collecting carrots to overcome them and jump out of them. It's basically like a sort of there's an element of gameplay, but it's also, there's a certain like element of voyeurism about like, what is this experience for people that are not in VR? And this is an example that will show of like we're like, all right, let's get our clients looking at it, our clients being in this game and getting some reactions. And so this is what we're getting in terms of like response and mood as somebody's biking through Bitmap Banshees. And
We had to have someone holding, like standing behind him basically, because people were like falling off in hysterics.
yeah, but because we were dealing with a certain level of hyper reality simulation, we were dealing with using fans to create wind when you're in VR, using haptic feedback to give you some sense of physical interaction, and sound, and all of these, and the physical act of exercising while doing it. All of this hit a cue with Corona, and they were like, well, we really love what you're doing, that you're experiencing, you're giving experiences that touch all the senses, and is there a way to do that without all the freaks in it? And so
They were basically like, you have to take the zombies out, take out the goth vibe, which was kind of hard for us because we don't really like the beach, but we basically they really wanted a super hyperreal paradise that you could touch and feel, that felt like a simulation of nature essentially. So that was kind of our brief, and it was super exciting because we were able to kind of play with haptics and actually trick people into thinking they're actually walking through a paradise.
yeah, and this is an important topic because if we look at what does a lack of nature do to the brain, and
It makes them nuts. So
yeah, and it makes them crazy. So we just we'll show you what we made, which is you'll kind of follow an antagonist as she walks through the entrance of this sort of urban, gritty warehouse and goes through VR and ends up in a paradise in real life in the end, but all set to the Nightmare on Elm Street soundtrack just for
We switched
for
it up.
vibe. So that's what makes the bread and butter in this organization is running these kind of speculative vision into client gigs, but a lot of VR has a strong effect and it has a strong vibe when you're in that. So if you're in a nature simulation, if you're in these kind of environments in VR, you have a sense of well-being, even though it's in a virtual environment. And so we can kind of choose, like, are we wanting to make something positive, make something negative, because these content approaches have a very direct effect on us. And because it's so mentally demanding and has such an importance on us, we want to make experiences that are considerate to a good positive vibe, depending on the day, again. But it's today we're feeling that, and it's
Yeah, it's not all goth wave. But for this project, we took inspiration from 70s culture and thinking about how nostalgia and technology might work together in an interesting way to help people kind of tune in and drop out a little bit and be a little bit less demanding on the senses, like some augmented reality and sometimes this technology can be. And so we created a platform called Lava, which uses audio fingerprinting technology, so kind of like Shazam, and it detects what music's playing and is able to trigger different augmented reality sculptures. And in this particular instance, these sculptures were on rotating vinyl, so it was synced with an album launch.
yeah.
Sometimes my mind, 'cause I know what you don't know, that there is so much to talk about. It seems I am ruled by sorry I lost myself. Felt cold even in your light. Sorry I broke.
So we did learn something about the 70s vibe and feeling of that incorporating technology, and that's when you're creating digital content, there's something nice about being sensitive to how we actually want to use the AR or use this new technology, and in this case lying on a shag carpet, listening to music, looking at the AR, then going back to lying on the shag carpet, making out, all of whatever you're doing on the whole thing. that the AR does not have the intention of needing 100% of your time and your efforts. And in this way, that's why we call the whole platform lavas. It's a certain subtlety where you can look at it, step away, and come back to it, and it still feels like a holistic experience. But sometimes, sorry, but sometimes you can't take your eyes off the AR, and that can be useful if you have something like a fitness plan for the day, and like so these kind of things of like we can also be aggressive with AR and be like, look at me, and use this to our benefit or for a certain motivational factor.
Those were some little guys that we created. We were thinking about like fitness and how boring it is, so we thought about having these little fitness assistants sit on your desk and remind you to work out, or like remind you to move when you haven't moved. But then we had basically, another client call, and they were like, can you put clothes on these things? And we have a friend from Montclair, so we ended up thinking about a really interesting project with them that ended up being a collaboration to kind of reimagine the printed page, and specifically for a lookbook for their Genius collection launched a few months ago. So flipping through the book triggers different content that's aligned. Each piece of content is aligned with one of the different designers.
And so we use speculative future visions and beauty and absurdity to give technology a soul. And that's, in this case, this is the soul of man controlling a graphics card future god. And just kind of like seeing how gesture can control these kind of like digital deities. But above all, we want to use technology to enhance reality, and that's why we're kind of stemming from all of like the extremes of human potential and emotion. So, thank you.
Thank you.